Welcome to the Labor Radio Podcast Network's live 2020 election coverage, focusing on what organized labor is doing throughout the United States to ensure all votes are counted and labor's voice is heard. Reporting will be based on contributions from our national network of members. Views expressed do not represent official positions of the network. The Labor Radio Podcast Network has over 70 labor-focused shows in 4 countries and serves as a one-stop shop for audiences looking for labor content and as a resource for labor broadcasters, podcasters, and content producers. You can follow the conversation with the hashtag LaborRadioPod, where we are broadcasting working people's voices 24 hours a day.
All right, thank you, Evan. We are live. This is the Labor Radio Podcast Network. I'm Chris Garlock with Union City Radio in Washington, D.C. We got a very full program ahead for the next 3 hours, but first of all, let's introduce all of our co-anchors for tonight's broadcast, and in no particular order, I'm just going to go around on the screen as I see folks. We have folks introduce themselves and their shows and where they are from. So David Story, why don't you go ahead?
Hey, good evening. My name is David Story with the Valley Labor Report. We are out of the big metropolis of Huntsville, Alabama.
All right, welcome, David. Jeremy, you're next.
I'm Jeremy Waugh, host of the Break Time Breakdown out of Louisville, Kentucky.
All right.
And in association with the Sheet Metal Worker, Local 110, Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation.
Smart. All right,
That's
thank
correct.
you. Brother Gene.
This is Gene Lance from the Workers Beat in Dallas, Texas. And Texas just had a big breakthrough in the federal court today when the Republicans tried to suppress 127,000 votes from Houston, and they failed.
Well done, Texas. You may not be blue yet, but you're definitely looking kind of purple. So good for you. All right, we'll come back to talk more about that in just a second. Sister Bama.
Hi, Bama Athrea here in Washington, D.C., the center of crazy these days. I am the host of the Gig podcast.
Got that right, but things are going to probably get crazier before the week is out, but we can handle that. We're used to that here in D.C., so thank you, Bama. All right, moving right along, jumping across the country up to the Great Northwest. Shannon, you're up.
Hola, everybody. I'm Shannon Myers, and I am co-host of Working to Live in Southwest Washington, which is Vancouver, Washington, not Vancouver, Canada.
And it's the other Washington, or we're the other Washington.
Oh. We're the original Vancouver and the only Washington State.
Okay. Well, we're working on that here in D.C., but we're not.
Why, yes, you are.
So,
I hope you can work that out.
Thanks for leading on that. And next to you on my screen, and as it happens in real life with your podcast, is Harold.
Yeah, I'm Harold Phillips. I'm the co-host of Working to Live in Southwest Washington with Shannon. Something Shannon didn't mention is that she is the president of the Southwest Washington Central Labor Council, who produces our podcast. And we've been very involved in the election up here. So got a lot to report from this corner of the U.S.
Well, thanks for your podcast. I know a lot more about what's going on up in your corner thanks to your podcast. So good work on that. All right, jumping down. Next up, Patrick.
Good evening. This is Patrick Dixon. I'm one of the producers of the Labor History Today podcast, and I'm coming to you from Arlington, Virginia. And I think I'm the only person on this call who won't be voting in this election because I'm not a citizen, and that's your only excuse.
Fair enough. We should also point out that Virginia used to be a pretty red state, then it turned purple, and now Northern Virginia, where Patrick is pretty darn blue. So well done. All right. Also here in the metro area, Alan, you're up.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Alan Weirdak. I'm a co-producer of the Labor History Today podcast here in technically I'm in Olney, Maryland. So Montgomery County, just outside of DC.
right, good to have you here. And another one here in the metro area, Tanya.
Tanya Hutchins, the host of Activate Live, which is the show that is produced by the Machinists Union in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. But I'm joining you from my home in Washington, D.C.
All right, Tanya, very good. Nicole, we're going to come to you in just a second. Let's go back up to, on my screen anyway, to brother Evan Papp, our executive producer, and just sort of the man with the plan, hopefully.
Thanks, Chris. My name's Evan Papp, and I'm the executive producer for Empathy Media Lab, and we're focusing on labor, political economy, arts, and culture, and trying to help share a lot of videos tonight, tomorrow, and the next day. So thanks for joining.
Excellent. Before we go to our first guest, just a couple of quick sort of news check-ins. Shannon, you were sharing some news from your area just before we went on the air. So do you want to cover that?
Yeah, we are actually trying to just let people know that be careful when you're out voting. We have had some cases of voter intimidation in the southwest corner of our state. Now, this is not everywhere, but there are going to probably be patches of areas in Washington state that may encounter voter intimidation. And honestly, what that means is people parking their trucks by ballot boxes. Because here in Washington state, we have all mail-in voting, postage paid, and they even get counted 21 days after election day. But a lot of people still like to return those ballots via ballot box. So don't be intimidated. Drop off that ballot. And one thing that I suggest, actually, our assistant Vancouver Washington police chief suggested, bring a buddy, bring a friend, right? So everybody get your ballot buddy if you're going to the box, and make sure you have it in by 8 p.m. tomorrow, election day.
Hey, Chris, I should probably also add that to the south of us in Oregon, there was a report of some intimidation that happened in Springfield in southern Oregon, where armed people actually blocked access to a ballot box. That's being investigated right now by Springfield police. Down in Oregon, they have to have their ballots in by 8 p.m. on election day. It's not like it is up here where it just has to be postmarked. So down there, Oregonians have to use the ballot box at this point. It's too late for their ballots to be delivered.
Gotcha. Evan, I'm going to come to you for the Trumka video in just a second before we go to our first guest. So if you can cue that up, that would be great. But look, we are seeing these reports of these various, some of it is clearly intimidation. Some of it, I think, is just people screwing around and doing something that's very easy to drive around with your flags flying and your big pickup truck. But the problem is that it can very easily shade into other kinds of things. Patrick, you were just sharing about shots being fired, I think in Richmond, Virginia. And so, it's something that folks need to be aware of. And it's been very clear from what I've been hearing is that all of the law enforcement folks are like, intimidation will not be tolerated. So what I'm hearing from you guys is make sure that people are being careful in reporting this stuff, right? Okay. All right. We're going to come to our first guest, Nicole Moore, in just a second. But Evan, I believe, has queued up a video from Rich Trumka, president of the AFL-CIO, that I just want to go ahead and run for folks. And then, Bama, you will be up after that. So, Evan, if you would, let's go ahead and roll that.
I'm Richard Trumka, president of the AFL-CIO. 4 years ago, after working our hearts out for his opponent, but coming up short, I made a promise to do everything I could to find common ground with Donald Trump. I made that promise in fidelity to the union members who voted for Trump and the working people whose lives and livelihoods depended on him. I was ready to work with Donald Trump, but Donald Trump refused to work with us. He broke his promises on infrastructure and manufacturing. The jobs he said were coming back never came. His tax cut for the ultra-rich accelerated the outsourcing of good-paying American jobs and worsened inequality. And during the COVID-19 crisis, his failed leadership cost too many of us our lives and livelihoods. And his disregard for workplace health and safety has been dangerous and very deadly. There are fewer federal health and safety inspectors today than at any point in history. See, working peoples deserve a leader who will focus on we the people and not just the person they see in the mirror. Only former Vice President Joe Biden can be that president. Joe supports the PRO Act, which will create a fairer process for forming a union. Joe supports the HEROES Act to protect our paychecks and pensions and public services during this pandemic. Joe understands America cannot go back to business as usual, back to an economy fueled by inequality and indifference. See, it's time to build back better, to create millions of good-paying jobs, union jobs, to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, to ensure the future is made in America and union made, and to finally have a plan to beat COVID-19 and rebuild our economy so it works for all of us. And you know what? Joe knows that workplace safety is more than a policy. It's a promise to our loved ones that we will return home at the end of a hard day's work. Joe Biden gets something Donald Trump never will. Workers will never quit on America, but our president must never quit on workers. Every day, in every way, we've served, we've sacrificed, we've healed, we've done it all. We've honored the country we love, the country unions built. Our choice in this election is between division and darkness or rebuilding America and restoring her promise. We're writing America's comeback story, and Joe Biden will help us begin a new chapter. Vote for our movement, vote for our country, vote for Joe Biden, the working person's friend.
All right. That, of course, Rich Trumka, president of the AFL-CIO. All right. For our first guest, I'm really pleased. This is an issue that, frankly, until I was reviewing some of our Labor Radio Podcast Network shows, like that of The Gig, which is Bama's show, I did not know about this proposition in California, although I was born in California, so I should have been paying more attention. So sorry about that. But Bama, why don't you go ahead and set this up and you take it away.
All right, terrific. Well, I'm really pleased to introduce our first guest for today's show, Nicole Moore, who is an extraordinary organizer coming to us from Rideshare Drivers United in Los Angeles, California. And Nicole, thank you so much for being with us. I know you guys have been super busy doing actions, calling, texting, trying to get out the vote. And I'm going to start by saying, you know, I hear even from activist friends of mine, they're like, oh yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have to be too worried about voting. We're in a blue state. I mean, California is as progressive as they come. Tell us why it is so important for people to pay attention to the ballot this year.
Well, here in California, we've been in a fight for a couple years to I'm a part-time Lyft driver, and I've been working with a bunch of other drivers to really work to figure out how to get fair pay and a voice on the job, you know, the whole thing. And because we were misclassified as independent contractors, and, you know, we don't look like independent contractors at all. We're totally controlled by an algorithm, which is the same as a boss. And so we've been fighting for our rights, and wouldn't you know it, when they passed AB 5, which codified the Dynamix decision and gave us the ABC test for employment, pretty much it's cut and dry. Drivers and delivery workers that are deployed by app are employees under California law. So the app companies decided to fight back, in kind of a last-ditch effort. Well, let's just change the labor law that applies to us. And they've created basically a second-class category of work in what's called Prop 22. And that's on the November ballot, which I keep saying November, it's tomorrow. And so, we're on the edge of our seats for a lot of reasons. We know that an NLRB, that is Trump administration, is not going to help us get our rights. But we definitely are not going to be helped by this second class form of labor law, which puts us in a category where we can't organize, where we're going to be making less than minimum wage and not have access to the basic, benefits that you have as an employee in our state. So, we started as kind of a ragtag crew a couple of years ago, about 400 drivers. We've built in the last 2 years an organization of 19,000 drivers in 3 chapters across the state. And we really have very little, but we are, fighting a very, to keep everybody principled in this. This is not a time to sell out, working people, our labor rights. So this is a time that we have to move forward. We have to lift the bar for all workers and to let this compromise because, Lyft and Uber are innovative companies. It's just not true.
Yeah.
We go out there every day.
Nicole,
we pay
let's
for the
break this
fleet
down.
and
Let me get you to break this down into pieces so people can just digest what you're saying. Because again, I think people think, oh, well, California, we got good politicians. So just breaking it down, quickly, we've got an election tomorrow. And in California, you have something that some of us in other parts of the country don't have to worry about. You've got these crazy ballot initiatives. So what you have on the ballot tomorrow is is a ballot initiative, Prop 22. And what Prop 22 is trying to do, we've talked about this, is a law was passed last year to protect gig workers, and Prop 22 will overturn that. Tell us, where did Prop 22 come from? I'd love to, I have been hearing all this crazy stuff about it. Who wrote this ballot initiative, and how much money are they spending on it?
Well, Lyft and Uber wrote it, and DoorDash, and the other app-based delivery and ride-hail companies wrote this law, and it just applies to them. It's not to the whole gig economy. It's just these two industries, which are new and innovative, but they're really not new or innovative. It's just a way to really pay drivers and delivery workers less, and create these really multi-billion-dollar companies that extract. I mean, I look at receipts that I have. I'm making sometimes only 20% of a passenger's fare. So who wrote them was Lyft and Uber.
Okay, and they wrote these, I mean, as I understand, right, you guys, as you were saying, you have built an enormous, power base in California, and it was particularly important this year. I remember last time we talked, how important it was in the face of the pandemic and all of these people being laid off, right, all of the unemployment. Why are the companies so, just convinced that they need to push this ballot initiative through? What exactly is going on there?
They don't want to be subject to basic labor law anywhere. And it's happening in this country all over the place. Judges are making decisions all the time that drivers and delivery workers look more like employees than they do like independent contractors. And the only reason to classify somebody like me, a part-time driver, as an independent contractor is so that you don't have to pay into the safety net as the employer, so that you don't have to pay minimum wage laws, so you don't, you really have less regulation and paying the safety net. I mean, you brought up the pandemic. I mean, basically 90%, the rides dried up when the pandemic and the shutdown happened here in California, and drivers were left without anything. We knew that under the law, that we were eligible for unemployment benefits, but the companies hadn't paid a penny into the fund. So when you called the unemployment office and said, hey, I don't have a job, the unemployment office said, well, it says here you're an independent contractor. I'm sorry, you're not eligible. Now that changed when PUA happened, but we had to educate both the unemployment office as well as the state of California that we actually are eligible for unemployment benefits, and ended up that most drivers got unemployment because the organizing we did. But now the companies, basically owe the state $400 million for this. I mean, these are big numbers, right? And it's a model. The only thing that is different about the way Lyft and Uber do the work is that they figured out how to skirt labor law, and we have to hold them accountable. We have to bring up not just Lyft and Uber and DoorDash workers to, basic labor law, but we have to lift that whole thing up, because the truth is we really can't live on minimum wage and the benefits that labor law affords us anyway. We need to lift the whole bar. And if we let Lyft and Uber and DoorDash delivery workers off we're not going to make it. So Prop 22 is their attempt to write their own labor law to exempt them from basic labor law. And they are spending, it's a historic high, $200 million on this campaign. I can tell you, every time I turned on my TV, listened to the radio, opened my mailbox, opened my driver's app, there was an ad saying you have to vote yes on this proposition. It is like the biggest anti-union campaign that you've ever been in, and it's targeting not just drivers and delivery workers, but the whole state of California. What's really sad at this point is that 40% of the people polled who voted yes think they voted to support drivers having a better wage. Okay, so they have done such a good job with their propaganda. It is neck and neck right now. It's a nail biter, and if we win, and I'm counting on it, I just got off a phone bank with like 40 volunteer drivers, still texting and calling, voters saying, look, I'm a driver, this law is going to hurt me, and turning people around and getting people to the polls. If we win, this is a huge victory of people and workers over $200 million worth of capital. So we're really, really keeping our fingers crossed, and we're going to be banner dropping tomorrow at both rush hours, getting people out to vote, because we think the higher the voter turnout, just like everything, it's going to help us.
Fantastic. I think a couple of folks on here are jumping in. Patrick, did you want to?
Hi, Nicole. Pleased to hear from you. This is Patrick Dixon from Labour History Today. I just had a question. I've read stories of DoorDash drivers having to deliver packages and meals with the propaganda for the campaign on. You've just mentioned that when you open the app, drivers themselves are encouraged to vote in a particular way. Now, I know Uber and Lyft have always been companies that like to play by their own rules, but could you tell us a bit more about that? It seems it's not just a matter of turning on the TV or getting apps when you watch videos on YouTube. They've found all sorts of insidious ways of targeting people.
Well, I mean, it's really hard because you turn on your app, and the minute, these are, you guys may be accustomed to the passenger app. Well, the driver app is similar, but you get the same level of indoctrination. Whether you open the passenger app or the driver app, you'll see, it's good for drivers, it's good for passengers, vote yes. 4 out of 5 drivers want to keep their independence, vote yes, right? And, it's just infuriating because, we are in a coalition of more than 50,000 drivers across the state. And while drivers would love their independence, it's a complete fantasy. So, it's just not what we have. And we all know, having filled out wage claims with the Labor Commission of California, that we're owed a lot of money with just basic labor law, right? So I'm not sure exactly if that answers your question, but this is where we're at.
It does. I think it shows in a way that, unlike the sort of previous adversaries we've had, though, when you're campaigning against tech companies and companies that in some ways are sort of on the cutting edge of communication, it's a whole different set of rules.
Yeah, they did a little survey, saying, click here to find out more about Yes in the driver's app. And then some drivers reported that then the customer was actually, given a screen that said, your driver supports 22, ask them why. And I just think that is so invasive and it's just despicable, and it's not fair. It's not a fair playing ground. Neither is the 200 million. When you think about, labor, and this is, established unions that have a lot of money to spend in politics, was only able to raise 15 million on this initiative. So when you really think about how much they're outspending us, we cannot let the initiative process be a way that these billion-dollar companies can rewrite labor law just for their own employees. I also
Nicole?
work in healthcare, and they can deploy healthcare workers by app. Does that mean that healthcare workers will lose their rights?
Hey, that's a really good point, Nicole. And I know that we have to move on here in just a little bit, but I've got one more question. I'm to the north of you up in Washington State. This is a California initiative. Why should people who are living outside California care about this initiative?
Well, and it's funny. That's just what I was saying. I think this can affect all jobs. Right now, we've seen the rights of people and our quality of living as working people go down and down and down over the past couple decades. This is actually a way that tech is figuring out a way around even the low bar that is current labor law. And I am just implore the labor community to say, actually let's raise the bar of labor as a whole and not let this happen where some people are under the bar of basic labor benefits. This is happening here, but this is exactly what Lyft and Uber's plan is around the world. They go in, they lobby heavily the elected officials. They try to woo, social justice and labor organizations, and they say, we're great. And they start with high pay and low pricing for passengers. And then as the market matures, it goes just the other way. And all of a sudden you have something that doesn't work for people and hurts communities. So many of my colleagues have gone homeless or housing insecure because their pay just diminishes and diminishes the longer they work in this work.
So would you say it's fair to say that if this happens in California, if this passes, we could see duplicate bills starting to show up in states around the country?
We're already seeing it. They're already working at the federal level and in countries around the world. They are trying to relieve industry of basic labor law.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us. We are wishing you the best with that vote tomorrow. We're all going to be watching, and I know people around the world are watching as well.
And maybe Wednesday night I'll be able to get some sleep. Thank you, everybody. A great opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate it. And thank you, Obama, for bringing us that report. All right. Thanks for joining us, folks. We're going to move on. We're going to be, this next segment is, we're in a couple of different places at the same time, in addition to our anchors who are all over the country as well. I see Jolene Libid from United Teachers. Jolene, good to have you with us. You are also from California, if I'm not mistaken, although I'm not sure which area. And then Terry Melvin, of course, from my home state. Terry, I think, are you in the Albany area?
My office is in Albany, but I'm in outside of Buffalo in Hamburg.
Oh, even better. Rochester's my hometown, so there you go.
Okay, yeah, closer.
upstate New York. And I think Charlie Fleming may be online as well, if I'm not mistaken. That looks like Charlie right there, and he is in Georgia, which is appropriately colored blue in his background, Charlie. So I'm liking that. Charlie Fleming, of course, president of the Georgia State AFL-CIO. So welcome to you all. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and start with you, Charlie, in the hopefully about to be blue or bluish state of Georgia. What's going on there?
Oh, we're pretty excited here in Georgia. We think we got an opportunity to change this state for the first time in decades. The last time a Democrat won our state was in '92 in Clinton's first cycle, and it's been truly remarkable what's been happening over the last couple of cycles, and everybody's really excited. Turnout has just been tremendous. The labor movement has been working its what's off, and everybody has from all the affiliates to and we just had the situation in Washington. We've actually gotten help these last couple of days from the Washington State Federation of Labor. We've gotten help from Colorado. We've gotten help from Wyoming, Tennessee, and we've been making thousands and thousands of calls, doing everything we know how to do. I just left a couple hours earlier a rally with President Obama. So it's been truly remarkable, the change that we've seen. Within the last 4 days, we've had President Biden, the next President Biden, but he's been to our city. His wife's been here a couple times. Kamala Harris has been here. And then, of course, today we had former President Obama.
That's wonderful news. Before I go on to Terry, just so all the rest of the folks here are members of the Labor Radio Podcast Network. I'm going to go on to Terry and then Jolene, and then we're just going to open it up to everybody because we're all broadcasters, and so I know these folks are going to have some questions for you guys as well. So Terry, let me just jump over to you up there in my home state in New York State. Terry is the Secretary Treasurer of the New York State AFL-CIO, also President of the A. Philip Randolph Institute.
Coalition of Black Trade Unionists.
Sorry?
Coalition of Black Trade Unionists.
CBTU, my bad. Thank you for correcting me. CBTU, the mighty CBTU. How are we looking in New York State, Terry?
Look, Chris, we are looking fantastic in New York State. I mean, nobody would expect anything but blue. Deep blue in New York State. I have spent most of my time over the last few months working in battleground states and working with our Coalition of Black Trade Unionist chapters in battleground states. And I really believe that we have a great opportunity here to have a true blue wave in this country. However, I am cautiously optimistic, remembering what happened in 2016 and where we all were in 2016. And it took me about a month to figure out I wasn't really in a nightmare, one of those dreams that goes over and over again. I am cautiously optimistic. I believe that we are staged in a place in this country where love will overtake hate and division will be looked upon in a way that the current occupant of the White House is definitely looking to divide this country. I believe this country is ready to come together. And I believe that the work that we're doing in all the battleground states, I mean, we've got a situation out here where I believe we will get Pennsylvania. It will be tight, but we will win Pennsylvania. I believe that Georgia is in play, as Charlie said, which has not been in play for decades. For Democrats, I believe North Carolina is in play, as well as Ohio is back in play. I think we're looking at a whole different demographic and how we're looking at these elections. And I believe we got a damn good shot at Florida. And if folks would have been,
John, brother, John.
Let me tell you, if folks would have been paying attention to me 10 years ago, Chris, we would definitely have a blue Texas this year. I've been preaching Texas for a decade now that we need to put resources in Texas, and our union folks in Texas are doing an outstanding job in Texas. And if it don't get blue, it's sure as hell going to be purple when it's all over with.
Well, I think Gene Lance would have to agree with you there, and I'm sure he's going to have some questions for you. From Brother Melvin, from your lips to God's ears is all I can say. All right, let's jump over back to Los Angeles, and Jolene Libid, who is organizer with the United Teachers in LA, the UTLA, and also involved with LADD. Jolene, what's happening where you are?
Hi, everybody. So similar to New York, LA is blue through and through. But I think what might be a little bit different about this election cycle is that we are aggressively organizing in preparation for election theft.
Yes.
So we have 34,000 members, over 933 school sites that they're split amongst, right, in LAUSD. And frankly, 2 weekends ago, we had an all steward meeting to get people ready to understand and share some of the same language around election theft, right? To inoculate our leaders around how to know that there's a problem. Everything from they stopped counting votes to state electors are voting inconsistently with a popular vote, Trump declaring himself a winner before ballots are counted, everything that you all are also preparing for. We brought up some good lessons from Florida in 2000, and we're preparing for mobilizations on the 4th and large mobilizations on the 7th. So here in LA, there are about 72 organizations and unions working together to put this together. I think that that's a good summary of where we're at. We know that our sisters and brothers and kasamas or comrades in other swing states are doing everything they can and putting everything on the line. And we see our responsibility in this in taking to the streets so that we could actually get all those votes that you're organizing for counted.
I think that a lot of us, you know, frankly, as Terry referred to, were sort of shell shocked 4 years ago, and the thing that I've been hearing over is it ain't going to happen again. You know, that is very clear. It is not going to happen again, and so better say. We talked about this among the network members at the beginning of the show. You know, the hope is that this is a Y2K of an election, and tomorrow night is just a landslide for Biden, and we'll all be moving on from that. But we want to prepare for the worst, hope for the best kind of a situation. All right, let me open it up to my fellow network members here. Not a shy group, as I'm sure. Harold, I see your hand up. All right, that puts you first.
Well, yeah, Jolene's mention of theft kind of brought to mind what Charlie's probably going through down there in Georgia. We have been seeing the pictures that have been coming up from Georgia of people waiting in line for 11 hours at some point. It's crazy. What is labor doing down there in the Peach State to help counteract some of this voter suppression that y'all are going through?
Yeah, we're working with a lot of our community organizations and partners. Many of you know of a lady named Stacey Abrams who ran for governor 2 years ago, who quite honestly should be the governor of Georgia right now. She lost by 50,000 votes. There was a lot of voter suppression that went on during that cycle. Well, she started a organization called Fair Fight, and they have gone out in the last 2 years and registered another 200,000 people. They have, so we're working with organizations like them. There's an organization, a state table called Pro Georgia, and many other coalition partners that we're working with to prepare. And we are preparing for some issues, starting with the polls tomorrow. We have been training folks to monitor the polls. We've been training folks to be de-escalators. We're trying to educate folks about who they should call when there is trouble at the polls. We're prepared. We're hopeful, just like Chris just said. Hopefully, we're going to shock the world tomorrow and everything's going to go smoothly. But if not, we're not going to take it. We're not going to stand by idle and let this stuff happen. And we've got a network that's working to come together, whether it's through communications, whether it's through the legal areas, or just getting into the streets and mobilizing. And we're preparing to do all of those things.
Charlie, it's an amazing story because, I mean, that heartbreaker of a loss for the governor's race, I mean, where it was literally stolen out, from under you. And I know you have, I think it's a Secretary of State who's still causing you guys problems, right?
Yeah, he is. Of course, our governor was the former Secretary of State, so
Right,
he was actually overseeing his own election, which was, only in Georgia, right? It is what it is. But much to what Terry said, and I want to thank Terry and the Coalition Black Trades Unionists for the local chapters who've been working very hard with all of labor and our community partners on getting out the vote. Everybody's been working extremely hard. At the end of the day, we'll see what happens. But I honestly believe for the first time in my career that we have a chance to flip Georgia. And for me, I'm getting towards the end of my career.
Say it's not so, Charlie. Say it's not so.
And after we've taken it on the chin many a time. And it would be so wonderful for me to just kick some butt. That's exactly what I hope to do tomorrow.
All right. Bama from the Gig Podcast, you're up next.
I'm going to jump in and ask Jolene a question. Thanks so much for joining us. And it's so great to see what you all are doing with the LADD. And I mean, I think we all know, right? The vote count's going to take a while. It's not going to be over on Tuesday night. So really curious about a couple things. First of all, I'm seeing, and I think a lot of us are seeing all these other organizations and some of the grassroots groups saying that they're going to get out and try and organize actions to protect the results. What can other groups be doing to connect effectively with you and with the labor movement and with the actions that you're planning for the 4th and the 7th? That's my first question. And my second question is, remarkably, we're even starting to see a few sort of, limp-wristed statements from the business community saying, we must, make sure we count every vote. Is there any, strategy you might suggest that we can do to pressure even the business side to come out a little more strongly on that?
So those are really great questions. So anyone that wants to join the LA mobilizations, which are called Defend Each Other and Demand Democracy, can literally go to Protect the Results and sign up for like a mobilize email. Basically you're putting yourselves on the list and we'll be getting all the notifications of the actions. So that's been really good for Protect the Results. Folks that want to join the coalition organizationally, you can also just email me, just jlevid@utla.net, jlevid@utla.net. And it's a really diverse, it's LA and it's really, really diverse set of organizations, unions, the Trans Latina Coalition, Black Lives Matter LA, undocumented organizations. I mean, there's just, people are really coming together in a way that I haven't seen since May Day of 2018, to be honest. So those are the ways to get involved. In terms of putting pressure on businesses, I think that's a stay tuned, right? Because we absolutely plan on escalating. If this is not won by that weekend, then I think that the groups are all committed to hitting the streets until we win. And we're not going to be using the same tactics every time. Mm-hmm. So I think it's in everyone's interest to join the mobilizations, including businesses and especially small businesses. So that's That will be my answer for that one. So protect the results. You can join our like mailing group. You can email me, jlivet@utla.net. And we're welcoming everyone to the strategy table for this one.
We'll try and get all of those links into the chat. Tanya, we'll take one more question from Tanya Hutchins. She's with Activate Live from Machinists. Go ahead, Tanya.
My question is for Terry Melvin. I know that 4 years ago, I ran into a lot of young people who didn't think their vote would matter and they didn't vote. And I'm hearing different things now, which is encouraging to me, but I know that you have an under 40 committee. What are you hearing among young CBTU members and people that you're out making outreach to?
Well, we've done a lot of work, Tanya, with the under 40 group and letting them basically take the lead on how we deal with this. We started out in this election after we had our candidate. And as you probably know, CBTU, for only the third time in our 50-year history, did an endorsement in a presidential race for Biden. We had to sit down with our under 40 and listen to them, first of all, to see what their issues are. And they just weren't feeling, they could not stand Trump, but they were not feeling any Democratic candidate, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like they were just like warm and fuzzy all over Biden. But they do get that they have to get Trump out of the White House. So, you know, my direction to them was, hey, use whatever you can to talk to folks in your age range to get them to understand that this election is not about us that have been around for 20, 30, or 40 years in this movement. But this election is about our children, is about them, our grandchildren that's going to be coming after them. And if they want a more just society, then they have to pick the candidate that was going to get them to that next level where they wanted to be. So what we've seen is a cohesiveness among them, and I think they're more willing to come together to do the right thing in the election. It was clear if I had this conversation with you 4 months ago, I would have been shaking in my boots, not knowing what was going to happen. But I'm pretty clear right now that the young under 40 groups that we're dealing with, the young Black folks that we're dealing with, they get it. And they know the importance of whether they are putting it for we're against Trump or we're looking forward to our future, either one of them are getting to us where we want to go, which is they're voting for Biden, they're voting for Democrats, they're voting for unity going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry and Jolene and Charlie. Thank you so much, not just for being with us tonight, which really appreciate it, but I mean, all of you have been working your asses off. Hey, this is Facebook. We can say what we want. You have been working your asses off. Fair warning, we're probably going to want to check in with you tomorrow night and see how this is actually playing out on the ground on election day, but we really appreciate you being with us tonight. Keep up the fight.
Thank you so much for having us. Appreciate it.
All right.
Just call,
Thank you,
Chris.
Chris.
You know, we're here for you.
Yes, sir. All right.
Same here. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Next up, we're going to go to, I'm pretty sure it's snowing up in Minnesota. Am I right, Shireen?
Not today, but it has been off and on for the past week. So it's supposed to actually be beautiful tomorrow.
I'm from upstate New York, so I know winter arrives early up in that area. So where exactly are you in Minnesota?
I'm in Minneapolis.
Okay. All right. Well, if you're going to be in Minnesota, that's the place to be. And we can see by your shirt that you are, of course, with AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. What is happening in Minnesota?
Well, it is a pretty busy and dynamic time. We actually, going into the elections, have kind of three initiatives that I wanted to share. One is just efforts to protect the vote. Second is efforts to defend the will of the people. And third is to put forward demands kind of regardless of what the outcome is. And so, you know, there have been a lot of threats that have come down about intimidation of voters, trying to make sure that people are afraid of voting, et cetera, particularly in Black and brown and low-income white communities. and SEIU Local 26, which represents janitors and security, kind of building services, has actually done a pretty massive effort that they're coordinating with over 100 members and allies to defend the vote tomorrow. So they'll be out in polling places around the metro area to make sure that people can go and vote in person, and that they'll feel safe, that they'll be able to get there and cast their vote. So that's one effort that's going on. And then we also have a couple of different protests that are coming up. The first of which is on Wednesday, the 4th, the day after the elections. We have a very large demonstration that's been called as a National Day of Action to defend the vote, right? We want to make sure that Trump is absolutely defeated, and that his supporters, that there can't be any question about that. And so there is a coalition that's come together with over 30 organizations. There are a number of different unions, including my union, that are participating in it, that have called for a protest and really putting forward a people's mandate around it. Again, we want to make sure that the vote is respected, but also to put forward kind of demands that we have, regardless of what the outcome might be, because we know that we need to change who's in the White House, but really change happens in the streets. And so community groups and unions have come together. And these are a lot of groups that actually came into being or started working really closely together in the aftermath, the uprising after George Floyd's murder. My union, I work at the University of Minnesota, and we have hundreds of members who are in the neighborhoods that were most impacted by the uprising. I live 6 blocks from where George Floyd was murdered. The issues of racist police violence is really a critical issue that we have to take a stand around. And so a number of unions and community organizations, Black Lives Matter, others have come together and really put forward a demand around the elections. There will also be a protest happening on Saturday that brings together a whole other grouping of nonprofit and community organizations and unions to kind of keep the pressure going. And we're going to continue putting people in the streets, saying that we demand real change. We need to make sure that people's vote is respected, but we also need to make sure that, again, regardless of what the outcome is, that we're putting forward an agenda that working people really need. Working class folks need to unite and fight. So that's what's happening in Minnesota in a long-winded nutshell.
It's a good nutshell. We like that. I know I'm gonna give preference to Bama and Tanya and Harold, just because I know that they have to step away at the top of the hour. So if any of you guys have anything for Shireen or general comments, I'm going to give you a shot. Tanya, why don't you go first if you got anything for us?
I would just like to say that I cannot believe that there are still people in this day and age who are not going to vote. I'm hoping that is a much smaller percentage, but the work that we do in the labor movement is so important when we're phone banking. I know we don't have the traditional door knocking that we have this year, but we're still doing lit drops. At least we're doing that with the Machinists Union. And I think it's going to pay off. I'm very hopeful. And I know that there are people that we can't persuade out there, but the people that are persuadable, I'm very hopeful that we are getting through. So this can be a turning point this year. And any young person out there that is listening and is on the fence, keep researching, keep listening. If you're listening to us right now, your vote matters. It really can improve your life, and it does have an effect on your life. So I thank goodness for the labor movement. And I'm glad to be a part of it. And I'm just so appreciative of everyone on this call and everyone who has tuned in for all of the work that you do. So hopefully we will be celebrating tomorrow night.
Thank you, Tanya. Tanya Hutchins, she is with the Activate Live podcast from the Mighty Machinists. Bama, over to you from the Gig podcast.
I think I'm going to be back with you tomorrow. So we've got more to come, and I hope we will have more stories from around the country as well. I think it's been great to hear just a few of our labor friends from different parts of the country, even in the past half hour. And Shireen, I'd be interested if you have a minute or two to comment on what's going on in terms of local or state races as well. I think we tend to forget because we're also focused on the top of the ballot, but you build power from the bottom up, right? So you need the local offices to all be with us as well. So I think that's just great to be able to hear what people are doing to fight and win in those local races too.
Yeah, I would say so locally. Well, here in Minnesota, we do not have the governor's race this year, so it is kind of number of municipal races, but really more at the state legislature. The House is controlled by the DFL, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. The Senate is controlled by the Republicans on a narrow margin of just a couple of votes, and our goal is to be able to flip that so we can put forward some real agendas. Minnesota actually has the highest voter turnout in the country, has for I think the last 10 years. And we continue to have that as a goal every year. We want to make sure that more and more people vote. And it's really, I agree, it's about the down ballot races. It's about making sure that, folks like Ilhan Omar, who was a member of my union, and a proud U of M AFSCME member, came up through the state legislature before getting into office in Congress. And so we want to make sure that we're putting forward candidates at the local levels as well.
Harold, I'm going to do sort of a tag team of Harold and Shannon from the same show, from the same area, and will also be leaving us at the top of the hour. So you guys can flip a coin and decide who goes first.
Well, we talk over each other all the time. I just edit that out. So, Shireen, I just really wanted to thank you for making the time to come on and tell the rest of the country what's going on in Minnesota. I used to live in the Twin Cities area myself in White Bear Lake. And so I know just how important voting and civil life is in that part of the country. But I also know how entrenched some people can be in that part of the country and how making change there can be tremendously difficult. So my hat is off to you and to all the young people in the Twin Cities who are out there doing their best to make a difference and to move that needle. AFSCME strong. Stay AFSCME strong, man.
All right, we'll do.
Shannon? There she is. We're going to give you the last word, Shannon, which Harold never does, right?
It doesn't happen. Shannon's got a secondary mute on her headset, which I think is on.
Oh my gosh, that is such a rookie move. That's okay. I can handle the disgrace. I can handle it.
No, it's all good. It's all good. That's why you pay Harold the big bucks, right?
Yeah, well, he's SAG-AFTRA, baby. We got to pay living wages, retirement benefits, all the good stuff. Final word, vote, 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 vote. We actually had Mark Riker, who is our Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Washington State Building and Construction Trades Council on our last show. And he was telling all of our Washingtonian friends, please vote, because we have people in other states who do not have the luxury of mail-in voting, and it is our requirement that we should be doing our right to vote because it's so easy for us. So for all of those people all over the nation who are standing in line, who are, waiting hours, who are tracking down their ballots, who are making sure people are getting the votes in, thank you so much. Keep it up. We have 24 hours.
But who's counting, right?
I am. I have been counting for days and days and days.
All right. Well, thank you, Shireen, and I really appreciate all the work that you're doing and taking time to be with us. Shireen is president of AFSCME Local 800. That's the University of Minnesota. Clerical workers make the world go round. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shireen. Keep up the great work. Thanks, of course, to Shannon Shannon, to Harold, to Bama, and to Tanya. If we don't see you later tonight, I know we will see you tomorrow. So, and all our viewers, stick around. We're not going anywhere. Evan, I think you might have an Ask Me video queued up for us, right?
Yes, I do. And I will.
All right. Let's roll that, and I'll be able to get a glass of water.
All right. Here I go.
All year long, we have been there for our communities, even when things were at their toughest, no matter the risk, even under life and death conditions. But through it all, we haven't had the leaders we deserve. We have the power to change that on November 3rd. We can choose a president who respects our service, who is worthy of our sacrifice, who will stop the layoffs and furloughs. This is a moment made for Joe Biden. He will stick his neck out for working people because he understands in his gut the challenges we face every day. He has a long history of uniting people around shared values. He is a seasoned leader with the temperament to pull Americans together in challenging, uncertain times. We've never needed integrity in the White House more than we do now. Vote for Joe Biden, who will bring to his job as president the same character and decency that you bring to yours.